Welcome back to Music 101. We're going to be looking through chapter 24 today. This is a continuation of material for the lecture for March 4th. We're going to be talking about Handel and the English oratorio. So the oratorio is a sacred vocal form. It has a large-scale dramatic genre, solo voices, chorus, and orchestra. It's performed in a concert setting with scenery or costumes. It has similarities to opera. It has recitatives, arias, duets, and trios and choruses. And the text is usually sacred, either a biblical story or a libretto by our religious leaders. Remember that a libretto is like basically the people that wrote the lyrics for an opera or an oratorio. So the difference between an opera and an oratorio is the sacred text. So that's the difference. Also, instead of like having action, it's usually just a chorus singing the lyrics, and then that's accompanied by a costume. So that you see that right here on number 2. It says performed in concert setting without scenery or costumes. So that's the difference between an opera and an oratorio. So this is a painting here of someone singing in an oratorio or prayer room of the church. Early oratorios were sponsored by the Catholic Church. They were public meeting places and messages of faith to a wide audience, and were a moral alternative to opera. So back then, the church didn't really believe that if you were a member of the church, you should participate in something secular like an opera. So instead, you're going to come to hear the oratorio, which was the Christian version of opera. So now we're going to get to probably one of the second most influential Baroque composers. We talked about J.S. Bach in the previous lecture, is George Frederick Handel, or Handel, it's pronounced either way, 1685 to 1759. Handel was a German composer, a director, and a producer. And he worked in 3 countries, Italy, Germany, and England. He wrote and directed and produced Italian-style opera, which we talked about in the prelude. And he is actually the founder of the Royal Academy of Music in London, which was founded in 1720. And I actually had the opportunity to conduct there, so that was pretty cool. He was revered in England, buried at the Westminster Abbey, which I actually saw his grave when I was there in England. His style is a very rhythmic drive, rich melodies, with dramatic expression, etc. Here's a picture of Handel. His output, we have 40 Italian operas, English oratorios, orchestral suites, concertos, keyboard, and chamber music. So Handel invented the genre of the English oratorio, which combines elements of Italian opera, Catholic oratorio, and the English grand choral style. The librettos for all of his oratorios were poets rather than religious leaders. These were not sponsored by the church, so these weren't considered the Catholic oratorios. These were an entrepreneurial venture by Handel. The success fits the national mood. Religious stories about a chosen people appealing to the economic expansion into the colonies and divine blessing, etc., etc. So the English people really liked these. And it also increased the interest in chorale singing. So the most famous oratorio that is written, he wrote several, but one of his famous ones is, of course, Handel's Messiah. It was composed in 24 days and was premiered in Dublin, and has been performed continuously since its premiere. It's really common to hear it around Christmas time. A lot of different churches and things like that put on a performance of the Messiah. The libretto were biblical verses from the Old and New Testaments. And there's a Christmas section, prophecy of the coming of Christ, an Easter section, suffering, death, resurrection, and spread of his doctrine, and the redemption section of the redemption of the world through faith. So we're going to listen to some of these listening examples. The first one is Rejoice, O Daughter of Zion, which is the example here. So this is the Christmas section. The one that I want to is the Hallelujah Chorus, yeah. And then, of course, the Hallelujah Chorus, which is the Easter section. It closes the Easter section. So, main one that I want to listen to today, we won't listen to both of them. You can listen to them on your own time. But I really want you to hear Handel, the Hallelujah Chorus, because this is, oh great, we have a video. Let's watch the video so you can kind of get a deal of what's going on here. I'm sure all of you have heard this at some point. Notice no action, no costumes, nothing that you would consider an opera. It's very similar to a cantata, very similar. You can find the lyrics to this if you want to follow along. It is in English on page 140 in your book. So you can listen. This section has got the imitative polyphony, where they're saying the same thing but going through different voices. And then the homorhythmic texture, while they're saying the same thing with the orchestra. So I don't know if any of you have been to a performance of this or have seen it performed, but most people stand when the Hallelujah Chorus happens. It's a tradition. And that was started in London. It was premiered at the Covent Garden Theatre, which is now the Royal Opera House, and March 23rd, 1743, during the reign of George II. So as you know, George III was the king that was on power when the colonies broke from England. So that just gives you a perspective of what's going on. So George II is the king, and there's a lot of rumors of why he stood up. Some people thought he was just ready to go, so he just stood up and remained standing. So a lot of people think that he was so impressed with the Hallelujah Chorus that he stood up, or it was common for people to stand during worship, so he stood up, and being the king, everyone else stood up as well to follow his example. Hence the tradition was born, and why we always stand up for the Hallelujah Chorus. So this kind of gives you an example of some of Handel's music. It's really cool. Please go back and listen to the Christmas section here, which is Rejoice Greatly. It's a very famous solo that a lot of people, aria that people sing as well if you become a vocalist at some point. So you will probably have to sing it as a female vocalist. So that concludes chapter 24. If you have any questions, just feel free to email me. Just a reminder that we won't meet in person until after spring break. So the first time I will see you will be March 25th, which will be our test. It will be open notes and open book. I'll be posting all of the PowerPoints on Canvas as well as these lectures, so please view them. They'll be posted here shortly.